Welcome to the Voices of Manufacturing with your hosts, Brian Salee and Michael Mullenberg, where business leaders across the industry share their unique challenges and insights.
It's almost like magic because it takes the learning process sometimes from weeks down to days, sometimes hours.
We want to help people within manufacturing and make them excited to come to work every day and go home safe to their family.
When you bring people in, they're anything but a machine. They're partners that can help you build your business. They can be your success if you treat them right.
And then you start having employees saying, when are you doing my machine? When are you going to come over here to my department? And now you get this buy-in.
This podcast is brought to you by Dazuki, the premier frontline digital transformation solution that allows manufacturers to standardize operations.
Michael, I've been wanting to get your thoughts on that last episode with Mark Abessi from Superior Pack. What'd you think about this concept of bootstrap digital transformation?
I just loved it. Mark and I think a lot alike, trying to just make things work, make things connect. When things don't work, innovate around it. I think we have a common theme of there's no such thing as an off-the-shelf solution. So everything requires some modification or training or, even we got into some hardware discussions, which I thought was interesting. So just love the approach. I think some of the vendors are probably cringing, thinking they've got off-the-shelf solutions. And here I am saying, no, they don't work. You've got to work around it. So that was a great episode. It sounds like his team is also very engaged in the process. I like the aspect of using the resources he had at his disposal and letting people innovate. And so that kind of tees up our episode for today. I think we're going to continue that conversation, maybe on a different scale in a different environment. So looking forward to the conversation today.
I totally agree with you. I thought Mark, he laid out this great framework. I really think it is kind of a framework about, he really understood his production environment and where he was not able to get information in real time and wanted to. How he's going to collect that information, but not put too much of a burden on the operators, actually make it easier for them. I thought that was one of the key takeaways from that episode. And, today's episode, like you just mentioned, builds on that. Today, we're going to be talking about really how do you prepare the front line for digital transformation. And so I'd like to welcome our guest, Bill Tomlinson from Volvo Mack Trucks to the show. Welcome, Bill.
Hi.
Yeah, welcome,
Thanks
Bill.
for having me.
Yeah, I see in the background, it looks like you got one of your trucks there.
In the conference room here, a lot of the conference rooms, there's pictures of our products. We're a company with a lot of history and a lot of pride in the brand and the products we build. So throughout the factory and throughout all the office areas, there's pictures of our products and, of course, our iconic bulldog that represents the brand.
Well, Bill, that's a good place to start. I think, a lot of people are probably familiar, obviously, with Volvo, maybe less familiar with Mack Trucks. Tell us a little bit about the company.
So Mack was founded in 1900 in Brooklyn, New York by some brothers, the Mack brothers. And then throughout the last 123 years, we've exchanged hands. But Mack has a long history of building durable, reliable trucks for our customers, a lot of history building trucks supporting the U.S. military. Early on, that's how we got the Bulldog as our logo in World War I. It was a tough, tenacious, reliable truck. And up to today, we're still building vehicles for the U.S. military. So we're located here in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. We're basically right in the middle between, close to Allentown, but we're not too far from Philadelphia, about an hour north of Philadelphia. So our facility, we build 6 models. We run 2 shifts. And we have around 2,500 employees. So it's a pretty big facility.
Wow, 2,500 at your one facility there?
So within this facility, we have a couple different locations in the Lehigh Valley. So we've got some logistics centers. We've got, of course, our main assembly facility here where I'm at. We have another smaller assembly facility where they build the military vehicles and a couple other parts locations as well.
when I think of Mack trucks, like I look behind you, you've got that garbage truck. I've seen a lot of, industrial type of applications for your vehicles. Are you guys building on top of your own platform, or are other companies buying your trucks and then doing the customizations on top of your truck?
So yeah, that's a good question. So we build the highway tractors that where you see the typical trailer being pulled or a lowboy. Um, those basically come right from the factory, ready to go. Anything that's a construction or a refuse or a garbage truck does go to a bodybuilder. So the customer, when they order their truck from their local dealer, also decide what body they want on, because there's a lot of different options for bodies. So they'll source the body as part of the typical sale of the truck or the design of the truck also. So we work with several of the bodybuilders, and our engineering staff designs the connectors to work with their particular chassis. So, if you're going to buy a garbage truck, it's a specific application. If you're going to buy a dump truck or a mixer, you're going to get some specific options and features for those bodies.
Can you
Yeah.
tell us about
What is your,
the relationship between Volvo and Mack?
So Volvo is our parent company. So Volvo bought Mack trucks back in 2000. At that time, they sold off Volvo cars. And with that money, they went on a pretty big buying spree. They bought Mack trucks, which was at the time part of Renault. So back before 2000, Renault trucks, Mack trucks, and Nissan, we were all one company. They bought the truck line from Renault. So they got Mack trucks and Renault trucks. And they also went and purchased a couple other brands at that time. Now Volvo they own Volvo Bus, which they've always owned, but they also own Volvo Penta, which is our marine and industrial engines. They own Rockback, and they build some off-road construction dump trucks. Renault trucks, like I mentioned, Prevost Bus, which is out of Canada. So they build luxury buses and motor coaches. Nova Bus is in upstate New York. They build city style buses. So, if you've been to Walt Disney World or any of the major cities, they typically your city style bus. Of course, Mack, and then there's a military brand, Arquus, that Volvo owns. So they build military style vehicles in Europe. So we have manufacturing facilities all over the world. Here in the U.S., I think there's 7 or 8 facilities here in the U.S. alone.
well, Bill, what is, I want to go back to your production environment. I always like, we're going to talk about how do you prepare the front line for digital transformation. But before we do that, I want to help the audience understand, what does your production environment look like? What are you guys doing there?
So we have 2 assembly lines on 2 shifts. So our vehicle 1 assembly line, we build 54 trucks per shift. So that's times 2 shifts. And there they build your typical highway tractor and your vocational truck. So there's a lot of different options and combinations. We have customers like UPS who have specific orders and specific specifications to their truck. And then on our second line, we build our cab over, which is like the truck you see behind me in the picture. Those are typically a refuse style truck. They're also used for concrete pumpers. And we build around 20 per shift of those style trucks per day. And then of course, because of that, our tack time varies. So, it's roughly 20 minutes on our vehicle 2, which is our cab over line. And it's a little under 8-minute tack time for our vehicle 1 assembly line. Considerably longer than the auto industry. I've been to some car plants and 2-3 minute tack time. To me, coming from a truck factory, it's like mind blowing seeing how fast their lines run.
Well, you guys are working on some big equipment too. So I imagine that has a factor, a lot more movement involved.
There's a lot of options for our vehicles.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. So the variability, you're not making the same truck one after the other. There's a lot of customization that's happening.
No, we're not typically going to. So if you were to buy 100 trucks from us, we're not going to run all 100 trucks of yours. We typically split them up over anywhere between a couple weeks and a month, because again, the variability of your order may be specialized. So in order for us to keep that cycle time, we need to split up. New York City again is one of our huge customers, and we don't build two New York Cities in a row because they're slightly over our cycle time. So then we need to give the operator some time to catch up with different a different model truck before they go back.
Bill, you've been at this for quite some time. I know you guys have implemented several digital solutions over the last few years to the front line. I'm curious, let's really start with that frontline staff, especially with what the type of work you guys are doing, where there's a lot of variation in the production process. When it came to implementing technology, you had to get some devices on the front line. How did you prepare your front line to start using these devices and interacting with new software applications?
So it's a bit of a challenge, and I mean we're still going through it today. So early on, implementing some of our torque tooling was the very beginning. A lot of our torque tooling is using barcode scanners. So we're scanning our technicians' paperwork, and then those torque records get recorded into the chassis records. So that particular truck has all the torques being recorded digitally. So that's how it all started probably 10 or 15 years ago. So it was a somewhat slow transformation for the techs on the assembly line. We used, and we still do in some areas, use a lot of paper on our assembly lines as our work instructions. But that's then where we're going towards now, the next transformation, going away from paper. Our teams have been installing computer terminals, computer stations, line side on the assembly line so that the operators can have their work instructions. They can access their SOPs. They can record all of the work processes that they're doing. They also can use it to communicate. We have some homegrown systems, so they can hit a little page button, and their supervisor or their team leader can come over, where they can call for IT support or maintenance. So this way, you're not, picking up a radio or yelling for someone down the assembly line. And, that gives us some traceability to how long it takes for someone to respond. If one area gets neglected more than another, we can try to address that.
I think historically in factories that I've been in, a day in the life of the operator was stacks of paper, little notes stuck to the machine, paging system, calling for help. So you're describing an environment where they've got a variety of tools. So, what does a day in the life of an operator look like today? They come in, they clock in, what are those systems that they're interacting with as they start their day?
Yeah, so we have a mixed variety of employees when it comes to technology. Just like a lot of other companies out there struggling to hire employees, we go through that. Part of the training center, we do onboard and orientation. From the very beginning, we have a vast variety of skill sets with people. There are people in orientations who don't own a cell phone or have never used a computer before. And then we've got some people who are relatively recently out of high school or attended college and decided the career or the study that they went for wasn't really what they wanted to do. They have some more skill sets. So each of our employees on the assembly lines still have paper, but in a lot of areas we are supplementing that with access to digital information. So there's computer screens, like I mentioned before, where some of them have the option to use paper or to use the digital screen. So as they get more and more comfortable with it, as they get some help with their team leaders and their supervisors, we're seeing more and more of them going towards those digital solutions, being able to use the digital work instructions, being able to pull up the SOPs on their own in the work instructions. Years ago, we used to have binders on our assembly line with printed versions of SOPs. You'd have to walk over, find the binder, flip through it, hope the papers don't fall out. The binders wore out after a while. We want to always guarantee that they were even the most recent revision. So that's one of the big things that digitalization helps with, make sure that we're looking at the most recent revision of things. So we're building what the customer's expecting.
Bill, you hit on a great point. I think a lot of companies struggling with hiring, right? That's just attracting is a challenge. Are you guys, when you're evaluating candidates, obviously you're going to take what you can get sometimes because you just have to, but when you're evaluating candidates, are you looking for, some skills around using digital technologies, whether software, even just as basic as, interacting with tablets?
So we're under the work mindset that we can teach them how to use those things. If they have the mindset that we want to come to work, we want to do the right things, we're already ahead of the game. At that point, we feel that we can teach people how to do almost anything. We are starting to look at some tablets in the training center here that I manage. All of my staff, the team on the group, the member of our team, they all have tablets so we're using iPads to go out there and train. Some of my team's developing apps, and most of my team came from the shop floor. So these were some high performing technicians who expressed some interest in, one, helping other people, and two, had some of that experience and knowledge, and they're sharing that knowledge with the other members of the assembly teams and logistics teams that we have.
Yeah, I like that mindset. If you've got the desire and the motivation to work here, we'll teach you the other stuff, I think that's a really great way to look at it. So I'm curious then, how are you guys teaching some of these skills as you guys are rolling out some of these new solutions? Somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience working with computers or tablets, do you guys have any training to support that and develop those folks?
Yeah. So for some of our positions, so we are a union environment. The technicians on the assembly line floor, members of United Auto Workers, but we do have some qualified positions. So certain jobs need some qualifications or need certain knowledge. So there's some testing that we do. Depending on what the job is, we'll give them either a written test on knowledge of the truck, or there are some computer tests. If they need to use a computer, we've got some basic computer tests that we've made where there are either multiple choice or they actually have to be able to create an Excel file or send an email to share their knowledge with us. And some of the people are interested in learning more, so they'll come in the training center ahead of time. We give them some basic lesson. There's a lot of great YouTube videos out there. Again, that's one of the reasons, that we like Suzuki so much, is because people watch videos and learn how to do it. So we sit through and show them some YouTube videos. We sit through them and give them some help in terms of how to do, some of the basic functions when it comes to using a computer. And a lot of them even share that they ask their kids. A lot of them have kids in elementary, middle, high school, or in college, and they will talk to their children or their spouse who may have some more experience, and they help them at home as well. So that's some motivation that a lot of our employees have in order to better themselves.
They don't want their kids knowing more about technology than they do.
Well, I mean, if you got kids, you know what it's like. Sometimes I have to ask my kids some questions too, even though I think I'm somewhat technologically savvy. Every once in a while, something stumps me. The PlayStation always gets me. I can never win, never beat them anymore.
Well, that's great.
Bill, you mentioned this training center. Tell us a little bit about this training center. Is this something that all employees go through, or is it just at certain points in their development, they're going to use the training center? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So our training center is relatively new. It's been around for about 5 years. It was something that myself and the team put together. I was in a different role. I was in quality, and we were trying to resolve problems. There was always, after the issue had happened, we were out there trying to fix issues, and then kind of tried to go into a little bit more of a proactive approach. So myself and a few other people started being a little proactive, and it kind of evolved to a training center. So we have a staff. We've got myself and 2 other managers. And then we've got a staff of 7 union trainers. And again, they all came from the shop floor. Most of them previously came from the team leader ranks. So we pulled a lot of the high performing team leaders, and they have become some of our trainers now. So we do everything from new employee orientation, both for our white collar and our blue collar employees. We're basically holding an orientation almost twice a month, just due to needing the sheer number of employees that we need. So yeah, so every employee goes to orientation. And then we also offer, like I said, those development courses for people who want to take other positions in the facility. And we give training on forklift. We do welding training, all sorts of certified positions in the facility, as well as just general routing and clipping, teaching people how to use torque tooling, how to use the cranes in the facility. We're involved closely with our safety department. Of course, the training center falls under HR. So we're doing a lot of soft skill training as well. Leadership, communication, those are huge challenges for our company and every company, I'm sure. So we get involved in a lot of that. Some of the training we give internally, some of it we have done through Volvo Group. Volvo Group has a training program that we can rely on. And then there's also a couple community colleges in the area that we also partner with. Some of those skills that we may not have in the training center.
I want to go back to the digital applications, both the hardware and the apps and the software, and just ask a question about how do you get resources to tie all that together? Getting the devices in place, getting the devices connected, getting the apps to talk to each other. What kind of resources do you tap in to do all that stuff?
So we have a couple teams here within our facility. We've learned over time. We didn't have them originally. What happened was someone had an idea. You don't want to stifle creativity. They went off and started working on this project, and lo and behold, there was another person in another area of the facility working on that same project, same idea, 2 different solutions. And we realized after a period of time that we needed to try to manage and control that. So we've got a couple teams working on standardizing our processes. So I'm a member of 2 of them. One's on the IT side, one's more on the HR side. So, we meet every 2 weeks, and when we hear about things that are happening, we ask that person to come in, they present. This allows them to kind of share some of those ideas. So, for example, paper is a huge problem. Recording training, we do a lot of recording of training. So for years, we would just have sign-in sheets. And depending on the class size, if it's 20 people, it's not a big deal. But once we record the paper sign-in, we have to load the training into our LMS so the employee gets credit for it. But every month we do a safety talk, and that's all 2,000 texts on the shop floor. So you get a stack of paper this big at the end of each month. And then my staff had to enter that into our LMS system. And, it just took an ungodly amount of time. So, you start to find your problems and you talk about them. We do a lot of Kaizens here. What is the problem? What's the root cause of the problem? And we, developed an app, for example. So using Power Apps, remember my team developed an app where we just scan our employees' barcodes. It looks up some information in the system and it saves in an Excel file. And we just load it right into our LMS system. So something that used to take us 3 days for now takes us an hour. And it's those little things that really make an improvement for us, because it wasn't a huge impact to the operator. Instead of passing around the clipboard with a piece of paper, they just walk up to their supervisor's phone and scan their employee ID, and it just gets loaded in a log. So, for them, they're more accepting because it's not a solution that means more work for them. And that's one of the things. A lot of our solutions that we try and come up with needs to be easier for the operator. We can't add technology and make it harder, more work, because they already have a lot of work as it is. Building these trucks, we have to make it easy for them to use.
Yeah, Bill, that seems like the challenge for most companies, right? Is, there's information that you want to get right during the manufacturing process. There's checkpoints, whatever it is you're trying to capture some sort of data. At times, that data collection can make it more difficult or more cumbersome for the operator. How do you guys balance that where these are the needs of the organization versus making sure that you're not making the job miserable and it's becoming a data entry position in addition to doing assembly?
Yeah, it's getting that input. So, when we implemented the Dazuki system, we piloted it for a long period of time. And when we pilot things, easy thing, right, is to go to the most technologically savvy person in the area or in the team and say, hey, we have this idea. We want you to try it out. So we do that, but we also try and find people who are sometimes a little more resistant or struggle with technology. And we try to pick both of them to get a balance. Because if we pick the high performer every time, everything's going to look great, right? But then when you roll it out to everybody on the assembly line, that's where you're going to find your problems. So we wanted to try and identify these problems before we go into full production with any type of IT system. So like I said, with that barcode scanner app that we made, it's really a simple app, right through Power Apps through Microsoft. It was probably created by the one member of my team in, a couple days, but we piloted it for, I don't know, 4 months before we fully went away and pulled all the paper sheets away. And even at the last month, we gave them the option between the paper sign-in or the digital sign-in. And we had very few people still hand the paper in. Most people, after they tried it 2 or 3 times on their own, moved away from it. It was the same thing when we piloted Dazuki. We picked a couple different areas of the factory where we knew that we'd have a pretty good high success rate, and other areas where we thought it'd be more challenging. You really got to get that full buy-in for everybody. If I come up with an idea and I say, hey, we're going to do this, people are somewhat resistant sometimes, but if you make them think and believe that they're involved, and we want them to be involved, we have them in our meetings and get them involved early on, it's a whole lot easier to get these changes done in a pretty quick and good way. And a lot of times they come up with suggestions that we didn't even think about. So we're able to make the systems and these processes even better. Even with, like I said, the apps and Dazuki, and we're giving feedback to both your company and our people internally who are creating apps and programs.
Yeah, Bill, I love how transparent you are about we go slow, we take our time. I work with a client that uses the term protagonist and antagonist. And I think you just said it. You have, the kind of the easy wins and the people that are going to, maybe challenge you a little more. And through that process, you're innovating, you're communicating, you're sharing, just thank you for being transparent about that process. It's not easy, is it?
No, and that is something that I personally learned from mistakes. Years ago, this little story here. Years ago, we had every summer we're down for 2 weeks, and this is when I was a quality engineer. Myself and the supervisor were like, let's clean up this area for the team, and when they come back, they'll have a nice break area. So we had some picnic tables brought in and microwaves and a few refrigerators, because before that, where they ate lunch was this old rundown picnic table. They didn't have any microwaves. They didn't have refrigerators. Some people were sitting on some spools that airlines used to sit on. They came back and they were pissed off at us. And we couldn't figure out why. We had to undo everything. We had to get rid of the refrigerators, get rid of the microwaves. And it comes, in the end, it turns out, well, these people liked one another, and we combined a few areas, and they sat where they sat because they got along, and other people in other areas were sitting together because they got along. We forced them all to be together. So we undid it. We got their feedback, and then we came up with a better solution. Eventually those same refrigerators and microwaves came back. They got the buy-in. They got to feel like they provided input. So, just that little experience I had really was something that I think about going forward with anything that I work on nowadays.
Bill, when you guys, I really like this point here. You're trying to make sure that you include the right stakeholders. At what point do you bring these people in, right? Like someone has an idea for bringing in a certain solution. Do you guys evaluate and say, yeah, this is a good idea. I want you to make that decision. Then you bring in these other stakeholders to get their opinions. Like, how does that process work where you're collecting that feedback?
Yeah, pretty much everybody tries to do that early on, not just myself. Um, even projects that affect the training center that we may not have full engagement in, we do get included in from either production or logistics. If they're bringing in some new forklift equipment that we may need to train on, because it just makes it so much easier. There are occasions though where people slip through the cracks. We had an incident recently where an issue slipped through the cracks. We bought a new piece of equipment in. They asked for training. We didn't know anything about the equipment. We had to end up buy some training material for it, and we were a little bit behind getting the techs trained. So, when the groups realize, the teams realize how if they don't get everybody, the stakeholders involved in the very beginning, when you roll out your project, there's a delay at the end. So trying to get everybody involved at the very beginning is key. And we even do that with our technicians on the floor. So when we're implementing a new process or a new model truck, some of the stuff we're getting into now with VR, we've been pulling them into some of our conference rooms, and we have some VR technology where they can, virtually walk around in their new workstation, because there's a lot of companies put a lot of effort into tooling, and then it hits the shop floor and the techs don't like it. Right. And then you just spent $100,000 or more on some tooling and it's collecting dust in the corner. And then you got to come up with another solution. So we again have learned from some of those mistakes and try and get our techs on the assembly line and logistics teams involved at the very beginning, early stages. It's tough though. It is tough getting people off the line, and getting really good constructive feedback from everybody. Some people don't want to, insult you. The techs don't always want to insult an engineer or project manager. So, getting that good feedback, I like it or it's great. That's never the feedback I want from anything. We're always looking for some constructive criticism to help us improve.
Yeah. Well, I think you also highlighted in your conversation, really defining the problem you're trying to solve. I mean, you seem to have a knack for getting at the root of the problem and making sure everybody agrees that it's really a problem. And that seems like a great place to start.
Yeah. So we really do have a strong Kaizen culture here, continuous improvement. The Volvo production system, it exists. I'm sure you've heard of the Toyota production system. Here at Mack, we call it the Mack production system, MPS, but it's based off the Volvo production system, which, everything is basically based off the Toyota production system.
TPS, yeah.
Yes. So we're spending a lot of time. We're spending a lot of time trying to figure out what the problem is. We do a lot of trainings also for our teams in order to help our managers do coaching, help our team members do coaching in order to really get to that root cause of the problem. Because you don't want to fix something more than once. You want to put some sort of solution in, make it a robust solution and implement it. So yeah, we definitely take the problem-solving mentality very close, world-class manufacturing principles.
Bill, I want to hit on something here because I think this is an area that, I know Michael and we haven't discussed too much on this show is you mentioned, you've got leaders, right? You've got supervisors, team leaders, managers. What are you guys doing to help them level up their skills when it comes to technology so that they're better able to support those frontline workers as you guys are implementing those technologies?
Yeah. So for a lot of our areas, we have curriculums, and we've been developing curriculums that each role has certain responsibilities and certain things that they should know. So with our team leaders, for example, some of the basics, getting them basics in some of the Microsoft programs. Volvo has a lot of homegrown programs for our production systems. So upskilling them. We've even gotten to the point where we have some team leaders who are interested in 3D printing. So we have a whole tooling department that makes our tools and fixtures out of using some 3D printers. We had a couple team leaders who had some background, had kind of did it on their own as a hobby. And we pulled them in. We scheduled a CAD training with them. We brought an outside organization in. We had a 2-day seminar, gave them some basics, and they're actually making tools and fixtures on their own. So, getting them engaged in solving the problems for their techs right there, their team right there on the assembly line without having to write a work order, wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks for the work order. And then it's not exactly what they wanted. So that has to go back to the drawing board. They get the actual person who is having that issue or wants to use the tool, come over, look at the design on their computer, and then they go ahead and print it out. So, that we've seen a lot of strides with that. When it comes to our supervisors, so we give all our team leaders, all our supervisors, cell phones. They all have laptops and computers, so they've got access to pretty much all the systems internally and can communicate to one another. And again, we have a lot of kind of homegrown apps and programs that we've been developing to try and fix these problems that we have identified or experienced over the years.
I'm curious, when we talk about this team leaders, supervisors, managers, implementing new technologies, there's always some level of resistance or some friction when you're implementing these technologies. Are you guys coaching these leaders, on how to address these situations, how to show some empathy to the frontline workers, not just, kind of shove it down their throats, you got to use this. Like, how are you guys coaching them in those areas?
So one of the positive things for us is our supervisor pool typically comes from our team leaders. We do a pretty good job, in my opinion, promoting within. So as a new employee, you start off as a material tech, a production tech. If they're interested, they can become a repair. We call it flex position, where they kind of learn all the jobs on the team. So if someone's sick, they'll fill in. A lot of time, those flex who are interested become team leaders. So they have that knowledge of the flex and what the production tech did. And then the same thing, when we have openings for supervisors, a number of our team leaders apply for those roles. So they have that knowledge. We're not typically hiring our supervisors off the street with relatively little to no experience how our production systems work. So they really can relate to the techs on the assembly line because they did those jobs. They remember what it's like. They know the problems. They know the tips and the tricks a lot of times. And we do really rely on them to help initiate some of these technologies. So we'll pull them in. Once we get ready to roll out any types of systems, we'll have meetings with them, our business team leaders. We'll meet with the team leaders and the supervisors and then try to roll that out in their small groups.
We talk about, how do you prepare this frontline? We've talked about, some of the ways you guys determine what solutions you want to pilot, getting stakeholders involved. You're just mentioning, how do you guys prepare your supervisors, your managers for coaching these frontline employees during a transformation? I'd like to switch topics now. Michael and I are always curious, what are some of the other apps that you guys are evaluating now that, you mentioned VR. I think that's a really exciting one. I'm not sure if you guys just saw Apple announced the augmented reality headset yesterday.
I saw that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about, what technologies you're looking at now and what you're excited about.
So we actually are utilizing some VR. In the training center, we about a year ago bought a VR welder. So all of our welders need a certification. They need to be certified in order to weld on our truck. So we send them to a local school and they get trained. But what we were seeing was people that we would ask who were interested, they don't always have the skill sets they said they had. So what we did is we ended up buying a VR welder because, just pure footprint of a welding stall with the welding equipment and all the metal wasn't exactly environmental friendly. We were going to create a lot of waste. So we purchased a VR welder and we are using that to first train the operator. A lot of them have some previous welding experience. Maybe they're welding at home or learned how to weld in school, maybe need a little bit of refresher. So we give them a couple weeks to practice on our VR welder. Then we send them to get certified at the local school. And we use the VR welder also to maintain that continuity. So if you're a welder, if you're not welding on a daily basis, there's a requirement to keep a continuity, keep your welding skills fresh. So we bring them in every 6 months or so. If they haven't been welding, they can use that equipment. And we get some pretty good feedback. We've actually had a 100% success rate. Everybody who has taken and trained on the VR welder has passed the welding exam at the local school. So they could really use that to show their competency. When it comes to welding, there's a little bit of differences. Your welding rod doesn't get stuck to the metal.
Yeah.
But when you're using it, it is enough to simulate. It allows them to get instant feedback. The system we bought gives them, depending on the setting, it can give them feedback if they're going too fast, going too slow, if their hands are too shaky. So it gives them that instant feedback, which we really like. We're also haven't purchased, but we're looking at some VR forklift technology because training a new person on a forklift can be dangerous. We have trained people how to operate a forklift, give them our certification, who've never driven a car before. I mean, there's a population on the younger side, some of them who don't have cars. They're not interested in driving or they can't afford a car, whatever the reason may be. And they're a good employee. A lot of them are actually pretty good at forklift driving, because the joystick and the controls are a lot like video games. They pick up on it very quickly. So we're investigating, I should say, some VR forklift technology. Some of these instances, we usually go out and benchmark somebody. So we find someone in the local area who has that equipment. We'll go look at it. We'll talk to their operator, see how they like it. Because we don't want to purchase that, make that sort of investment if our employees aren't going to use it. We'll bring some of the employees with us too, get their feedback on it. So yeah, the VR forklift is, it's on my radar as one of the next things that we're going to buy. Even our logistics team sold at a trade show and they brought the paperwork back to me. And I said, yeah, we're already looking at it. So our logistics team has already bought into it.
Yeah. Michael,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to tell Michael, we had a guest on a few episodes ago and she had this great line. She was in learning development. And she said, we can't find the people we need with the skills we need. So we have to create them. And you're just hitting on exactly what I think most manufacturers are going through is I can't find somebody with an experienced welder out there. So I'm going to have to develop that skill created in that person. I think that's just the way of the future for a lot of manufacturers, right? Is you're going to have robust systems like you guys have with the VR welding.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the people that we're hiring, come from all walks of life. They may have worked at a convenience store or a fast food restaurant. Some of them had their own landscaping business. Some may have worked in manufacturing. But our type of manufacturing is a little bit different. Hiring someone who knows how to build a truck off the street, good luck. You're not going to find those people are already here. We already have them deployed here. Finding new people is the challenge.
You created them.
Correct, and that's what we're trying to do.
Phil, I just have to comment. You are so unlike the typical digital transformation person that I've run into. You're not chasing shiny objects. You don't have your order for your Apple headsets already, and applying it and seeing the benefit right away. I mean, every example you just shared, you're seeing a real benefit. The welding thing is working. The training people without driver's license on forklifts is working. So just every one of those things is measured amount of success and not just chasing a digital tool or a trend. So I applaud you for that. Sounds like it's going well.
Yeah. We don't want to be looking for a problem for our solution. No, that is not the mindset that we want to have.
I always like the phrase, it's a hammer looking for a nail,
Exactly. Yep. Same idea.
And that it seems
that's something that we're very much aware of.
You guys seem to be, the first term that comes to mind is unrestricted when it comes to evaluating and looking for new solutions. What's the management team like there? I mean, is leadership, just behind you guys and pushing digital transformation, you know, down in the organization? Say you guys figure out what solutions are going to be best for us?
Pretty much it is what is best in terms of the solutions. They want the area to develop it. So we've got team boards. Who should develop the team board? The team. It's not my job. It's not our production systems. We're helping, we're guiding, we're coaching. But we're actually revitalizing our team boards right now. So they're the ones, our team leaders. We've got 3 or 4 team leaders who are involved in this area of redoing our team boards. Our plant management has visions. They've got goals. They give us some objectives, and we do our best to follow it, but they are pretty flexible. If someone here can prove that this is the best way to go, they're open to that. They'll buy into it. Same thing happened with Suzuki and some of these other apps that we put in, the VR forklift, the VR welder. You write a Kaizen with a good business case. And really no one's going to say no to that. You have a good return on your BC ratio, benefit to cost ratio. You're good to go.
Bill, I think you could probably put together a master class for folks in manufacturing on how to justify the expense for a new application. I recall when you guys brought in Suzuki, it's still the best ROI justification presentation I've ever seen. You guys literally did like a side-by-side creating work instructions in Suzuki, creating them in Excel, I think it was, or PowerPoint, and just showed how much more time it takes. Is that something, are you guys doing these kind of, detailed cost justifications, ROI presentations with every solution, or some of them just kind of like no brainers? It's like, yeah, we got to move forward in this direction.
Now, pretty much every project that we work on has to have a Kaizen for it to be approved. We have a continuous improvement team and our business control team. They work very closely together, and they actually have quarterly, they do a review where they reward the best Kaizens, whether it's the largest impact or the biggest safety issue decrease, whatever it may be. They meet, and we actually celebrate these sort of things. Our leadership team leads that activity, and everybody gets together, and it's a pretty entertaining time. Everyone gets a chance to present the Kaizens that were in the consideration to be the top dog Kaizen for that quarter. So yeah, everyone's on board with that.
Michael, I'm curious on your side. You've helped get a lot of solutions implemented at 3M. Did you guys have any type of structure to how you propose new solutions to justify, the investment?
Yeah, well, a variety of formats. Like I could probably learn a few lessons from Bill here on how to do it better, for sure. But yeah, there was always that A/B comparison. The control group. We found that for some of these solutions, that was a very expensive evaluation. So we had to try to convince them more on the gut feel. In a perfect world, we'd have the side-by-side comparison, but we could convince them to move ahead with a pilot and just, sort of gauge the enthusiasm. Some of our other solutions were sponsored. We had great air cover. We had some leaders that would say, do what's right. I got your back. And so there was very little justification until we proved out the solution in the end. So yeah, I think in this business, I think Bill, you'd agree, you have to be a little bit of a salesman, and you have to really think quick on your feet. And if you can restate the problem statement and just go back to that every time, I think that's part of the equation. I think you're doing that really well. I'm very inspired by what you had to say.
Yeah, we try the best that we can. And when I mean we, I mean there's a lot of people here on this facility. By no means am I the smartest one here. Even in my own department, some of the things that members of my team come up with, they teach me things. One of my guys, he taught me how to use Power BI not too long ago, and
No, that's good.
it was something that actually ended up saving me a lot of time. I was able to automate an email that I had to send on a regular basis. So now all I do is I click a a button in a SharePoint list, and it automatically sends the email to everyone who needs it. So it cut down on time, and it standardized the email, because whether I sent it or 2 or 3 other people sent it, now it's the same message that gets sent. So, little things like that really do help. A lot of times people are afraid of the investment of the time ahead of time. To implement these things isn't easy. It takes a lot of time. It could take days, weeks, months, but in the end, the amount of time it saves on the back end, just for us updating SOPs is a huge time savings from what we were doing before to what we were doing now. Updating an SOP in Excel was a nightmare. People hated it. That was some of the biggest feedback that we got with the use of technology, how much easier it kind of made create and then revise. Because we want them revising SOPs. Any SOPs that, revision 1 means no one's looking at it. I like the SOPs that are revision 20.
I'm curious.
Michael,
did anybody say, Bill? Yeah, you know where I'm going, Brian.
Yeah,
Bill, I'm curious. Is did anybody say about your digital solutions that this is fun? Because that was one of the reactions we got, and we actually use that as justification. We'd point to a person and say they think this is fun compared to the old way. When is standard work fun?
I don't think they said fun, but they said it was so much easier, and they did not want to go back. The group that we piloted it with said it was either this or they're not going to do anything ever again.
Well, there you go.
Okay. I got to convince our leadership team that that's the way we want to go.
Yeah, you take it away, you'll have a ride on your hands.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, this has been a great conversation. I think we've definitely learned a lot, and these are some great takeaways for our listeners. I'm curious, for you personally, it seems like you've probably grown a lot in the last few years implementing these solutions, working with all these teams. Has there been any outside resources that you've used, or anything you would point somebody else who's maybe was in your position 5 years ago that you could point them to?
Yeah. So honestly, I and including my team, enjoy reading books. Now, with that, I mean Audible.
Yes.
I'm not a reader. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I watch a lot of YouTube videos. So there's a SharePoint guy that I follow, and I watch his YouTube videos because I'm always trying to make our SharePoint easier to access because it's our main landing site. So I watch a lot of YouTube videos, just a lot of try and develop myself. And I kind of think about that. I wasn't a great student in school, I was more interested in sports and things like that. But like you said, the person I am today is definitely not the person I was a few years ago when I joined this team. But yeah. Audiobooks, there's a ton of great audiobooks out there, all sorts of different topics and podcasts. I've been, since I discovered your podcast, I've pretty much listened or watched on YouTube to pretty much all of them. So, and there's a lot of interesting perspectives that different people have. Like, I don't have all the ideas. I don't think I'm not the smartest person in the room. So I want to learn what I can and encourage my team to learn and help in the training center, help the rest of our staff grow and become more productive in our facility.
Yeah. I could tell, for Michael and I, we get to sit back and interview a lot of amazing guests that have these great experiences at these big companies, small companies, you name it. And I think that kind of the common thread we're seeing is the people who are leading digital transformation, they all have this continuous improvement mindset. There's always a better way, and they're going to pursue it. And so I definitely could see that's something strong in your organization. And I think that's really inspiring to see management, kind of let you guys go, let you loose, obviously with some constraints, but it's really neat. I think that's probably the answer when it comes to, who should lead your digital transformation strategy. Well, start high level, but let the folks down further in the organization make all the choices.
Yeah. And we're always cautious. I mean, like Michael said, I like technology. I don't have the newest Apple Watch, and I think my phone is 2 generations old, but I like technology. So anything that we can do to learn and use it, make our lives easier, make higher quality products for our customers, what we're trying to do here. If these trucks aren't running, our customers aren't making money. That's the one underlying thing. We are providing a tool. Our trucks are a tool for them, for our drivers, for the fleets who are buying our trucks to make a living. And if we can't give them a quality truck in a reliable amount of time, they're going to go somewhere else. There's a lot of other truck manufacturers out there, so it's very competitive for us as a brand.
Yeah. Well, Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We appreciate you
Thanks for having
spending
me.
the time with us and sharing these insights.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill.
Nice meeting you both. Or Michael, I've met Brian before.
All right, guys. Well, you guys have a good day. Thank you.
Call it
Thank you.
around.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Voices of Manufacturing podcast with Brian Salee and Michael Mullenberg. This show is brought to you by Dazuki, the premier digital transformation solution that allows manufacturers to standardize operations. Our website, where you can listen to our episodes and find tons of helpful resources, is dazuki.com. Sign up for our monthly newsletter so you'll be the first to know about new episodes. That's dazuki.com, and join us in creating the frontline of the future.